بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. So continue where we left off, speaking about the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ narrated by Anas ibn Malik, where he saw a nukhama or spittle in the wall of the Qibla, and then he wiped it with his noble hands ﷺ, and then he mentioned to the Sahaba who were there that if one of you is standing in his prayer, then let him know that he yunaji rabbahu, that he is having a private inner conversation, dialogue with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is between him and the Qibla, and we mentioned a little bit about that. فَلَا يَبْزُقُنَّ فِي قِبْلَتِهِ وَلَكِنْ عَنْ يَسَارِهِ أَوْ تَحْتَ قَدَمِهِ. So no one should spit or expectorate something in the direction of the Qibla, وَلَكِنْ عَنْ يَسَارِهِ أَوْ تَحْتَ قَدَمِهِ, but rather on one's left or in the direction other than the Qibla, and then underneath one's foot. So that means if we were praying Asr here and you had some spittle, it's okay to spit it on your left, on the carpet. Right? No, not right. Right? You sure? No, the hadith is clear. It says right here. We're reading the hadith. It's the words of the Prophet ﷺ. He said it. He said, do it on the left. So why is it not right? A context. As we mentioned, why did I give a little description of the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ beforehand? Because you have to understand that in order to understand what this hadith is talking about. So when you have the ground is sand and pebbles and so forth, in other words, something of the earth, and it's no different than the earth outside, then it's a different situation when instead of you have carpet and you have or tiles and the way modern, not so modern, but later on the masajid developed, and this was a type of a flooring that was adopted. So that's the context of it. And you'll read other hadith that talk about how even a man went so far as to urinate in the masjid. And what the Prophet ﷺ, it's a very similar reaction, and that he told the Sahaba, don't do anything to him, don't denigrate him, don't take him by the collar and throw him out, let him finish. That's what he told them, ﷺ. Because he knew the man was from a Bedouin, not from Mecca. They had, so here the Prophet ﷺ took his own context, right? Because he knew he was not from there, he knew he was a Bedouin, he knew that they had different sort of societal norms than people living in a city would, like in Mecca. So he took all that in consideration and told the Sahaba, no one do anything to him. And then they just cleaned it after that, and the man walked out. And so this is very important, because you cannot just take a text and just try to go and apply it without understanding kalam al-ulama, what the ulama said about them. And alim means he read the text and he knows the context. And the context can be known not by what's literally there in the text itself, but by something from outside, right? By, for example, reading all of the hadith that deal with adab al-masajid, the adab of the masjid, and not just reading whatever first hadith comes towards you and say, well, that's what it means. Well, did you read the whole thing? Did you have sort of a preponderance of all of the particular hadith to this particular issue or mas'ala? And then maybe you can say, I think this or I think that. Did you read all the relevant ayahs in the Quran? Did you read what the Sahaba said about it? Do you even know Arabic language? right? To be saying that it means this or it means that or this word means that. And not just you have a dictionary and you're looking up the words, but do you know the structure of the language, the context of it? Do you know when to understand something literally? And do you know when to understand it figuratively? Do you know the rules of that? If you don't know all of that, you have no business talking about what a hadith means or what an ayah means unless it's something you heard from a alim and you're repeating it. That's what I'm doing here. I'm not claiming that I have all of that. But all I can say is I heard it from the ulama or I read it based upon what I understood from my ulama, my shuyukh, and that's it. That's all I'm giving. But for some people who are walking around not even having actually the original text, it's a translation, and there's no such thing as translation really. It's someone's interpretation of the meanings of that. So the translator himself has to, if he's going to do the so-called translation correctly, he himself or she herself should be well acquainted with all of the things I just mentioned. Otherwise, they shouldn't be translating either, because they're going to put words and meanings there that perhaps are not there and are not intended. So I stress this because it's important, especially when we read hadith, because unfortunately I think our approach to hadith in the latter period, and what I mean by latter period is maybe in the past 50 years or so, has been one that's more about finding evidence to support our particular point of view, right? The refrain we hear from everybody, well, what's your dalil? This whole what's your dalil sickness that's going around, disease type of thing, as if I cite the hadith, then that's a dalil for you. Unless you're a alim, right? Hadith is not dalil for you. You know, that may sound controversial, but that's the way it is. The ulama, they said al-hadith or al-hadith yadillu an-nas illa al-ulama. Hadith will misguide people, except for ulama. So who is able to interpret the hadith? Al-ulama. Then you say, well, why are we reading it then if we're not ulama? We're reading it because we're trying to first have the blessings of the words of the Prophet ﷺ, be acquainted with it, understand it, and enter us. We're not trying to derive rulings from it, and we're not using it as evidence to support our particular position or our particular school of thought or anything like that. Leave that to the ulama. What we're doing here is much in the same vein as, for example, Imam al-Nawawi, when he compiled his 40 hadith in Nawawiyah, he took 40 of the, let's say, the foundational ahadith of the ummah, and he put them in his arba'in. He did the similar thing with Riyadh al-Salihin. That's read, and you can read those hadith, and he always includes some ayahs, and you can infer from the chapter headings that, you know, the point he was trying to convey. That's different. But you know, to go about it and sort of just, you know, pick and choose here and there to support your particular evidence, and then to say, well, what's your dalil? If we're talking about legal rulings for someone who is not a alim, not a scholar, then his dalil is qawl al-alim. It's what the alim said about it. That's your dalil, because that's a level about what you're going to understand. But if, you know, the thing about text is I can bring the hadith and sort of make it say whatever I want it to say. I can bring this hadith and I can tell people it's perfectly legitimate to spit inside the masjid, just don't do it in the qibla. Right? I can understand that. And if I didn't know the context behind it or anything, then that's what people would understand. And no one would oppose me because it looks like that's what it says. But is that what it's really saying? Do you know all the context? Do you know the circumstances? Do you know the situation? Do you know how the masjid was back then and how it is now and what happened, so forth, all of that. So, no, he's not saying to do it in the masjid that we have now. This was assuming, under assumption, that you can bury it. Because there's another hadith that says that the kafara for spitting in the masjid is its defin, is its burial. So not just covering it, but even like putting it beneath the sand some level so as people won't step on it again or put their head on it, anything like that. So, ولكن عن يساره أو تحت قدمي. So again, it's the direction, the left or then underneath his foot where he can cover it or bury it. ثم أخذ طرف ردائه فبزق فيه وَرَدَّ بَعْضَهُ عَلَى بَعْض وَقَالَ أَوْ يَفْعَلُ هَكَذا. Then he took the taraf as his ridat, which is his outer garment like this, and he actually spittled in it, and then he rubbed the two like this to show people what to do. Or يَفْعَلُ هَكَذا, or to do like this. So when the Prophet ﷺ actually does the action itself, we can infer from here there's a certain methodology he's using to actually teach people. So when saying is not enough and you have the ability to actually show physically, then you should show it physically as well. If you want to describe to someone how to knit a garment or a scarf or something. I can sit here and I don't know how, but I can sit here and pretend I know how and say, well, you have to take the first thread and put the second thread, and then I'm not even using my hands and I describe it to you. It's not the same as if I actually took it in front of me and I'm showing you how to do it, right? And so that was one of the ways of the Prophet ﷺ. He would actually, on occasion, draw lines in the sand and indicate things. When he would say that the people of this ummah kalbunyan marsus is like a building, and then he clasped his fingers together like this to show people what he meant by that. So using these sort of physical identifiers and descriptors to drive the lesson home, so to speak, was one of the methodologies of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's quite an accepted practice, I believe, now, even in common pedagogical schools of thought, that you also introduce what they call visual aids, right? We call it visual aids today, but back then, Prophet ﷺ, he had his own visual aids, and he was doing that, and didn't need PowerPoint or Keynote or anything. He was just doing it with what he had available to him. أو يفعل هكذا. Any question? So I think we mentioned enough from that hadith. Move to the next one. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها قالت كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يحب التيمن ما استطاع في شأنه كله في طهوره وترجله وتناعله. So here it says Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, al-Mu'minin, may Allah be pleased with her, said that the Prophet ﷺ used to love at-tayammuna, which means beginning with the right. So beginning with the right, مَسْتَطَعَ فِي شَأْنِهِ كُلِّهِ, in all of his affairs, as much as he could. And then she elaborates and says, فِي طُهُورِهِ. Tuhur here is a general term that means wudu and tayammum and ghusl, right? Because we have three different types of tuhur, three different types of ritual purification: wudu, ghusl, which is the bath, and tayammum, when you don't have access to water or you're unable to use the water, then you would go to tayammum. So all of those, it's preferable to start with the right before the left. وَتَرَجُّلِهِ وَتَنَعُّلِهِ. What is tarajjul? I actually saw one commentary or some editor, and he said tarajjul means to start with the man on the right before the man on the left. It doesn't mean that. Because it comes from rajul, man. But tarajjul means combing of hair. So this person, whoever did the tahqiq or whatever, I guess he didn't do his homework, but he said he just guessed. So he thought tarajjul from rajul, start with the man on the right, with the man on the left. So the tarajjul is tasrih al-sha'r, it's the combing of the hair. So combing of the hair starting with the right before the left. وَتَنَعُّلِهِ. التَنَعُّل is from a na'al, which is your shoes or your sandals. So putting on the right before the left. So here we see that even the word that Aisha radiallahu anha used, yuhibbu, hub, mahabba, he loved to do this. So it wasn't a simple sort of injunction and practice, and no, it was more than that. There was something behind it. And tayamun, or the right, there is a sort of what we call tafa'ul. There's an optimism with things starting with the right and not the left. As is mentioned in the Quran, وَأَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ مَا أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. Right? Who are the people of the right? And you know the people of the right. Versus أَصْحَابِ الشِّمَالِ. Right? The ones who receive their book مِنْ وَرَاءَ ظُهُورِهِم. The ones who receive their book of deeds from behind their backs. And that's tasha'um. That's a bad ending. Or pessimistic ending. أَمَّا التَّفَاؤُلِ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. Those who come from the right. So the right side is associated with khair and good and positive things. And generally speaking, the yasar, or the left side, is not considered that. It's considered the opposite. So because of his love for this, let's say, seeking the blessings therein of beginning with the right, he used to try to do it mastata'. So mastata' means in as much as he could. Now again, let's look at the context of the hadith. She says in general, fi sha'nihi kullihi. Now the word kull means all, right? We know that, at least in Arabic language. Well, I think all of us know that. Sha'nihi, sha'n, his matters, means all of his affairs, all of his matters. Mastata', as much as he could. And then she says, tuhurihi, tarajulihi, tana'ulihi. Those three. His tuhur, which is the purification, and tarajul, combing of hair, and then the tana'ul. About the hair? That was one of the styles he had, but not the only one. They said there were three, depending on length. The shortest would be right past the ear, or about the same level at the bottom of the ear, and then the second one after that would be past the ear, and then he actually had it long, and it even came to his shoulders. So he had three, at least from the Sunnah, that's the three that were mentioned. And then, so the longer hair you have, then the more idea you have more to comb. Obviously, if your head is shaved or very short, it's not really an idea of combing. But actually, the Arabs at the time, many of the men had longer hair. It was just a sort of a urf back then. Some of our young men today might use this and say, "Oh, see, look there." But do you want to have long hair because of the Prophet, or because I don't know, the lead singer or whatever group rock group that you're interested in has the long hair? Again, it goes back to, like we said before, is it ghayra for the deen? You want to be, it's because of the deen, or is it because of nafsani? And if it's truly because for deen, then khalas, leave him alone. But if it's not, and it's something else, then I think it should be discouraged. And don't use the deen as a means to justify your own nafsani actions. And unfortunately, this is plaguing us. People are using the deen, and they're getting to aghrad and maqasid, yani things they want of the dunya, by using the deen as a vehicle for that. But that's a musibah. That's a calamity, a tragedy that's happening. So, we have to do our best, at least for us, not to be part of that vicious cycle. So here, she says, "Fi sha'nihi kullihi, mastata'a fi sha'nihi kulli." Now, kull means all his matters. So did he really start with the right in everything? Or were there some exceptions? There are exceptions, because we know from other hadith that the kull here doesn't mean totally every single thing, right? Because even the word kull, it can mean an absolute type of kull, yani absolutely everything. Or it could, what they say is kull idafiyya, yani all of a particular subset of something, not all of everything. If you read Surah Al-Kahf, also we go back to the same example. وَكَانَ مِنْ وَرَائِهِمْ مَلَكٌ يَأْخُذُ كُلَّ سَفِينَةٍ قَصْبًا. Right, when Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam went with Al-Khidr, you know what I'm talking about, right? Went with Al-Khidr, and he did some strange things. He couldn't find an explanation for. One of them is that he put a hole in the boat, right, of the orphans. And so, and then Al-Khidr mentioned the reason why, and he said because there was an unjust ruler كان وراءهم ملك يأخذ كل سفينة غصبا. He used to take every safina, every boat, غصبا. He used to just usurp it. But then why would he put a hole in the boat? So not every boat, every sound boat. So if the boat had something wrong with it, then the unjust ruler was not interested in it. So that's why Khidr put a hole in the boat. That's why he kharama, he put, disabled it, so to speak, so that they can have the boat for later. So here, kul doesn't mean every single type of boat, or that it meant every sound boat. So there's a particular word in there that's, let's say it's omitted, but it's understood from what? The context. In other words, every sound boat, not every single boat. So here, ما استطاع في شأنه كله يعني كل شأنه الطيبة أو الجيدة أو الخيرية. يعني all of his affairs that are good. So entering the masjid is one of those things. You enter with your right. But when you exit the masjid, you exit with your left or with your right? No, you exit with your left. When you enter the bathroom, you enter with your left. Right? So there's exceptions because they say the things that are tayyiba, that are honorable and sharif, you start with the right. And things that are not in that category, you start with the left. So when you exit from the bathroom, you actually exit with your right. And when you exit from the masjid, you exit with your left because they're the opposite, those two things. So when she said mastata, as much as he could, here mastata means yani there were exceptions. Yani there were things that not necessarily always you start with the right. Again, how would you have known that unless you read kalam al-ulama or you heard it from the ulama? You couldn't have known that unless you're familiar with the whole context around it. So that's the danger of of trying to figure things out by oneself and reading them and not having the proper requisite knowledge in order to do so. So that's the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. We'll go to the next one, maybe we'll be able to finish it. عن كعب بن مالك رضي الله عنه كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قدم من سفر بدأ بالمسجد فصلى فيه. So the Prophet ﷺ, narrated by Ka'b ibn Malik, and he said when the Prophet ﷺ would come back from traveling, he would start with the masjid and he would then pray therein. And it's also known that when he was leaving, most of the time he would actually leave from the masjid. He would pray in the masjid and pray 2 rak'ahs like rak'at al-safar. Either it was part of a fard prayer to begin with, or he would offer the extra prayers in a time that was not prohibited and then enter upon his travel. And so here the idea of travel being connected with the masjid is one that we see from this hadith and other ahadith. And so the Prophet ﷺ, when he came back from travel, because remember, travel back then and even today, you're always not so certain you're going to come back. Anything can happen. Something happen to you, you don't come back. Because when you leave somewhere, the only one who can actually bring you back is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the one who took you out is also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is certain. Just because you bought the ticket on lastminute.com and credit card, went through and they sent you the email and everything is there and set, doesn't mean that you're actually going to get on that plane. Anything can happen. You may not. So ultimately everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who's going to will it and desire it, or He's going to decide that it's not the best thing for you. So you have to have an acceptance of this. But when you're coming back from travel, there are even certain sunan. Here's one of them. Certain adab, etiquettes associated with returning from travel. It's not mentioned in hadith, but other hadith mentioned if you're traveling away from family and coming back, it's actually one of the adab, the etiquettes, to bring back something for them, like gifts. And don't buy it in the duty-free airport, right before on the airplane, because your wife will figure that part out. Not that I know about that, but I just heard. So you have to bring something more authentic from the place that you're actually... Anyway, that's my bad joke. It's getting late in the day. So one of those would be to bring gifts, would be to begin with the masjid. And it's symbolic of shukr, of gratitude. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He brought you back and so to to be connected with the masjid also in general. A later hadith also included in this abridgment is the 7 that are shaded on the Day of Judgment. And amongst the 7 are رَجُلٌ قَلْبُهُ مُتَعَلَّقٌ بِالْمَسَاجِدِ, a man whose heart is connected with the masjid. And so when you say, for example, you have a particular local masjid that you pray in, when you were traveling, that means you're away from Salat al-Jama'ah and you're praying with the imam that you know and the brothers that you see there and so forth. And so when you left that for a while. So when you want to come back, it's sort of part of your family too. It's a loved one just like your family is. So the Prophet ﷺ, obviously his masjid al-Nabi ﷺ, and this is where he would disperse, right? When the Prophet ﷺ said the Hadith al-Qudsi, or the Hadith about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu huwa al-mu'ti wa ana al-qasim. Allah is the one who gives, wa ana al-qasim, right? Al-qasim means the one who distributes. So the knowledge, the ilm, the ma'ani are ultimately from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But who is distributing to us, who is passing it on to us? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the place of his distribution was the masjid, primarily. That's where it was. So when he came back from travel, he prayed and offered 2 rak'ahs in the masjid. Now that's from a ma'nawi sense. There's even a practical reason behind why he prayed in the masjid first, before going home. And that was, obviously when the Prophet ﷺ traveled and he came back, everybody heard about it when he entered Medina. Right? And we know the people who were waiting for him from the Hijrah on the outskirts of Medina near Qiba, طَلَعَ الْبَدْرُ عَلَيْنَا, when they saw the Prophet ﷺ coming. So his khabar, his traveling and returning, traveled very fast. And so back then they didn't have instant message or phones or a way to send a message that I'm on my way. So it was a way for his household, his wives, to be aware that he was coming. And this means that this gave them the opportunity, because if they heard, oh, the Prophet ﷺ is in the masjid, then they knew he would be just a matter of a short time when he'd come home. So that means that she had time to prepare herself and the house for his arrival. And that was also part of the reason why he prayed in the masjid. But then that means that there should be some preparation for his arrival. Which means what? Which means that there is sort of adab and etiquette between husband and wife for how they appear before each other, and how they greet each other, and how they are with each other. So that means, like the saying of Ibn Abbas, he used to say, I like to adorn myself and beautify myself. أتزين لزوجتي كما أحب أن هي تزين لي. I like for myself to be adorned in a nice, good state for my wife, much in the same way that I like the same from her. So that means that this should be observed between husband and wife. So that means if you were out playing football with the lads on Sunday afternoon and you come home all sweaty and maybe it was raining and mud and dirt and so forth, it's not exactly the state you want to greet your wife in. So either you head very quickly towards the shower or you shower outside, but to sort of be in that particular hay'ah, looking like that, it's not really with the best possible manner, because you wouldn't want the same from her. So it goes both ways. And so by no means it doesn't mean it's only for women to prepare themselves for their husbands, but also the opposite is true as well. And that's how the marriage relationship works. So there is a certain level of let's say, etiquette and adab that should be observed between both husband and wife when they're greeting each other and how they see each other. And also to be careful for them not to see each other in a manner that might cause displeasure to one. That's important. Because we are bashar, we are human in sense, and no matter how much we think we've sort of transcended that a little bit and we don't care, but you do when you see someone, with not smelling nice or the hair looks bad. It does have an effect on people, and that's just part of our bashariyah. That's just part of our humanness, so to speak. And I would say, especially in light of all the images and the unreal images we are bombarded with every day, all of those magazine covers, You're walking through the train station and they're all over the place. They're not real. What those people, those images, they're just images. They're photoshopped. They go through 3-4 hours of makeup before they actually go in front of the camera. And then when they do go in front of the camera, after the picture is taken, like I said, they Photoshop it, they change things around, they omit things, they touch up, and then even the type of lives these women lead, lives of almost starvation and inadequate sleep, and it's not real. The whole thing is fake. But yet, people think that's the ideal. That image that the corporate world has come up with is the ideal of beauty. And that's not what beauty is about. Beauty can take on many forms. By submitting to this narrow, very unreal definition of beauty, right? We're submitting to that corporate design on ourselves. That's what they're selling to us. They want us to believe that that's it. That's the ideal. That's what it should look like. That's what every woman should look like or should aspire to look like. And there are more than enough cosmetic surgeons and all the like going around who want to help you to get to that. And they even make reality shows out of it so that you can reach that ideal, to look like someone else who's not even real to begin with. Women don't look like that. And men don't look like that. You just ask them what they go through before they actually have to take the picture. People are real. People have blemishes. People have idiosyncrasies. People have, no one's perfect. So it's important to move beyond image, right, and move to the real. Look to the inside, the real meanings that are there. This is not to say that physical attractiveness is not important. No, it has its part, and it's there, and part of human nature is recognizing physical attractiveness, and people are usually more drawn to the physically attractive person than the one who's not. That's fine, and that's why it's taken into consideration even in the Sharia. When the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tunkah al-mar'atu li arba'," the woman is wed or married for 4 reasons, and one of them, he said, is beauty. And then he said at the end, but the best is to marry one for her deen. He did not discount the beauty part. He just said that the deen is ultimately more important. Don't marry for beauty alone. Don't marry for beauty alone, because that's not enough. Because the initial, let's say, euphoria that comes along with that goes away. Anyone who's been married more than a year or 2 knows that. What's left? What's left is, what's the deen? What's keeping you together? It might be what brought you together, but what's going to keep you together? It's not going to be beauty. And beauty doesn't stay. We all get older. We all have gone through the process of aging, and it's supposed to be a tanbih. It's supposed to be a sign for us. As the hair grays and the body sags, this is telling you that you're getting closer to the grave. So this is sort of like an alarm system Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has built into all of us to remind us of this thing. And so to want to perpetually look youthful may be a nice idea, but it's not going to happen. As the poet said, or the Arabs say, "Al-attar la yuslihu ma yufsiduhu ad-dahr." That the attar, or the beautician, or back then they had, the attar was a person who has the itr, who had the essential oils and beautify things and hair and things like that. He said this person is not going to fix that which has been ruined by time. So, once you get older in years, then no matter how much makeup and oils and skin cream that you want to use, eventually, and you're still going to be the age that you are and the age you're supposed to be. So the Prophet ﷺ, he began in the masjid. His wives had time to prepare for him, and then he would come home. So that was even an inference into the way that the marital relationship was with the Prophet ﷺ. So actually, I think we'll stop here. Inshallah, we wanted to leave time at the end for questions. They can be written down if you don't want to ask them, or you can ask. That's fine too. Then we'll pray Maghrib after that, inshallah. And now, once again, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Jazakumullah khair. Hopefully there was some benefit, and inshallah we'll be able to have the opportunity to do this again.